October 7, 1817. The dogs began howling before the sun had fully disappeared behind the Tennessee hills. In the fading light along the Red River, something unseen moved against the walls of John Bell's farmhouse, and by nightfall the quiet frontier settlement near Adams would whisper a name that still clings to its soil, the Bell Witch. The autumn air carried the scent of drying corn and damp earth. John Bell stood at the edge of his field, listening. He was not a superstitious man. Born in North Carolina, a veteran of the Revolutionary War, and a respected farmer in Robertson County, he believed in land, labor, and scripture. But that evening, as shadows pooled beneath the trees, he felt something press against the silence, an awareness that did not belong to wind or wildlife. The Bell family had settled along the Red River more than a decade earlier, carving a prosperous farm from Tennessee wilderness. Their cabin was sturdy, their fields generous. Neighbors knew John Bell as steady and practical. His wife Lucy was devout and warm. Their children, Jesse, John Jr., Drury, and Betsy, were raised on work and prayer. There was nothing in their lives that suggested a legend would grow from their doorstep. Yet in the weeks leading up to that October evening, the strange began to gather like a storm cloud. John had seen a creature in the cornfield, its body lean like a dog, its head broad and unnatural. When he fired his rifle, it vanished without a trace. The children reported whispers in the woods, voices that dissolved when followed. The sounds were dismissed at first, attributed to imagination or the restless wild. Then the disturbances entered the house. It began with knocking, soft at first, like cautious fingertips against wood. Lucy would pause in her evening chores, her breath caught as the knocks circled the cabin walls. Soon they grew louder, rattling the doors and shaking the bedposts. Blankets were pulled from sleeping children. Slaps echoed in the dark. Betsy Bell, barely a teenager, was often the center of it. Invisible hands tugged at her hair. Pins seemed to prick her skin. She would cry out, and the room would respond with laughter that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Word traveled quickly across the frontier. In early 19th century Tennessee, faith and fear walked side by side. Preachers thundered of unseen forces. Neighbors gathered to pray in candlelit rooms. Some believed the Bells were under divine trial. Others whispered of witchcraft. John Bell tried to maintain control. He ordered his children to remain silent about the disturbances. He feared ridicule, perhaps worse. But the phenomena escalated. By winter, the voice had found language. It spoke in whispers at first, repeating hymns Lucy had sung earlier in the day. Then it grew clearer, articulate, and sharp. It recited scripture flawlessly, debated theology with visiting ministers, and mocked John with intimate knowledge of his thoughts. The entity identified itself as Kate and claimed to be a spirit disturbed by injustice. The source of that injustice, according to the voice, was a neighbor named Kate Batts. Kate Batts was a real woman, known in the community for her sharp tongue and strong will. She had quarreled with John Bell over a land dispute, a matter involving the sale of a slave and contested boundaries. In a society where reputations were fragile and grievances lingered, the argument had festered. Now, the unseen voice insisted it was connected to her, whether as her spirit or an embodiment of her anger. The accusation split the settlement. Some defended Batts as misunderstood. Others avoided her entirely, convinced the haunting proved her dark influence. But Kate Batts herself denied involvement. If she felt fear, she did not show it publicly. Inside the Bell home, terror became routine. Visitors came in droves, eager to witness the phenomenon. Some stayed overnight, hoping to expose fraud. Few left unchanged. They reported beds shaking beneath them, covers ripped away, sharp blows landing without visible assailant. The voice conversed with guests, revealing secrets they had not spoken aloud. It sang, laughed, scolded, and sometimes comforted the children. Among the visitors was General Andrew Jackson, then a rising political figure who would later become President of the United States. In 1819, Jackson traveled to the Bell farm with a small party, skeptical yet intrigued. According to local accounts, his carriage wheels locked inexplicably on the road near the property. No matter how the horses strained, the wagon would not move. A voice from the woods allegedly announced that the general could proceed and witness the spirit that night. Whether embellished or true, the story cemented the haunting in regional lore. Jackson reportedly left unsettled, claiming he would rather face the British at New Orleans again than confront the Bell Witch once more. But for John Bell, there was no departure. By 1820, his health had deteriorated sharply. He suffered spasms, difficulty swallowing, and episodes of paralysis. The voice tormented him relentlessly, claiming responsibility for his suffering. It declared that it would kill him. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell lay bedridden, his breathing shallow. A small vial of dark liquid was discovered in the cabinet where his medicine had been kept. The family insisted it had not been there before. The entity proclaimed it had replaced John's medicine with poison and forced a drop into the mouth of a cat, which died instantly. The next morning, John Bell was dead. His funeral was held under a sky heavy with winter clouds. As neighbors gathered to mourn, the voice reportedly sang hymns loudly from the trees, its tone triumphant. For many, the line between legend and reality dissolved completely. After John's death, the activity gradually lessened. The spirit claimed its purpose fulfilled. By 1821, the disturbances faded almost entirely. Betsy Bell eventually married, though her engagement to a local school teacher, Joshua Gardner, had been broken under the entity's constant harassment. The family remained on the land, but their lives were forever altered. Over time, the Bell Witch became one of America's most enduring supernatural legends. Scholars have attempted to rationalize the events, suggesting mass hysteria, elaborate hoaxes, psychological illness, or the social tensions of a young frontier community. Some historians point to the land dispute as fertile ground for resentment and rumor. Others examine the religious fervor of the era, when revival swept through Tennessee and spiritual warfare felt tangible. Yet no definitive explanation has silenced the story. In Adams, Tennessee, the Bell Witch Cave still draws visitors. The Red River flows past fields that once echoed with unseen laughter. The cabin itself no longer stands, but the land remembers. Oral histories passed down through generations preserve details too consistent to dismiss easily, yet too strange to accept without question. The legend persists because it inhabits a gray space between documented history and whispered memory. John Bell's death certificate does not list a witch. No court record confirms a haunting. And yet letters, diaries, and testimonies from that era describe experiences that unsettled hardened men and pious women alike. What happened along the Red River in the winter of 1817? Was it the cruelty of rumor turned lethal? A calculated deception that spiraled beyond control? Or a manifestation of fear so powerful it reshaped reality itself? Perhaps the answer lies not in proving the supernatural, but in understanding the human. The Bell family lived at a time when isolation magnified belief. Nights were long and unlit. The forest pressed close. Faith provided comfort but also framed unexplained events as moral battles. In such a world, a voice in the dark carried enormous weight. John Bell was not merely a victim of a haunting. He was a man caught in the tension between reason and fear, between reputation and rumor. His decline may have been illness compounded by stress, his death the tragic culmination of psychological torment. Yet to his family and neighbors, it felt deliberate, personal, orchestrated by something unseen. The power of the Bell Witch legend rests in that ambiguity. Standing on the banks of the Red River today, one hears only wind moving through sycamore leaves. The land appears peaceful, almost gentle. It gives no outward sign of violence or malice, and yet beneath its quiet surface lies a story that refuses to fade. Legends endure because they speak to something deeper than facts. They remind us that even in moments of progress and expansion, fear remains a constant companion. On the American frontier, where survival demanded strength and certainty, the Bell family encountered something that defied both. October 7, 1817, marked the beginning of a chapter that blurred the boundary between history and myth. What began as knocks on a cabin wall became a tale told for more than 2 centuries, retold in books, whispered on porches, debated by scholars. John Bell's grave rests in Tennessee soil, unmarked by any mention of witchcraft. But the story attached to his name has outlived generations. It has become part of the cultural fabric of Appalachia and beyond, a reminder that sometimes the most brutal legends are born not from monsters we can see, but from the shadows cast by our own fears. And in the stillness of certain autumn evenings, when the air turns cold and the dogs begin to howl, the memory of the Bell Witch feels less like folklore and more like an echo, carried across time unanswered, waiting in the dark.